So, good morning, all. Thank you very much for those of you who are joining us both near and far. Today is actually an amazing session. This is actually the culmination of the work that these young people have been doing over the last 2.5, nearly 3 weeks. Tomorrow is going to be pitch day. So today we're going to be discussing the art of the virtual pitch. I have a set of questions that I'm going to ask, but I'll be very honest. I think for a lot of the young people who are preparing to getting ready to pitch tomorrow, I am going to leave some space a little bit more than normal for them to be able to ask questions specific to what their concerns might be. So I'm looking forward to getting all of your insights. It is amazing. We have an amazing selection today of everybody from, wow, I believe we're going all the way from London all the way to the West Coast. So we are covering a lot of time zones today. Thank you so very much for all of you who are actually taking a little bit of time out of your day to impart your wisdom and your insights and your knowledge into our young people. We'll go ahead and get started. It's a fun question that I like to start off with. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do. And today I'd like to ask you, what would you tell yourself at 16 years old if you had an opportunity to go back in time? We will start with Julie.
Dan, you always like to pick on me. Hi, everyone. Great to be here this morning. Daniel, and Todd, you just wanted to check, is this the same group that I spoke to a couple weeks ago, or it's different?
It is the same group.
Okay, great.
No. It's a different group.
It is a different group.
Camp, right? Different camp. But
yes, sorry, yes.
This is for students, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome. I just want to make sure people aren't sick of me yet. If I say the same couple of things. Great to be here. So what would I tell myself when I was 16? Probably that, so cheesy, but probably to just have more confidence. And things will work out in ways you don't expect it to, which I'm sure you guys have been told this, but you really don't believe it until you've lived through it. And I say that a little bit biased because I'm in my hometown right now where I was when I was 16. And it's everything physically is the same, but mentally I want to think I'm a little more advanced. I mean, who's to say?
So thank you very much. Oh, and what do you do? A little bit about that.
Okay. Well, a little intro. So my name's Julie Zhang. I am an investor normally based in New York City for a company that's called Betaworks, which is a incubator and a venture capital firm, which basically means we invest money in startups, a lot around media and consumer, some of which you guys might be familiar with. So excited to talk a little bit more about that today.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I'm not picking on you, but Lily, you are up next.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Elia Alvarez. I'm out of San Francisco, California with Bank of the West. I'm a visual designer there supporting the marketing, sales, and product teams. So my design spans a wide spectrum from print to digital. So my 16-year-old self, similar to Julie's, it's a lot of patience and just realizing that things can come full circle, You don't always know what you want at 16. You might not know what you want at 30, and that's okay. But I think if your passions and your experiences, they'll come together, and if you keep pushing towards something, it'll just come full circle, and it's a lot of patience.
I love that you said you spoke about passion, and I think that is very important, and I think we don't necessarily speak about that enough, but we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through our discussion today. Kevin, I'm not going to leave you for the very end. Welcome to the party. If you will, just tell them a little bit about yourself, and you get a chance to hop in the time machine and go talk to your 16-year-old self. What insight would you leave with that person?
Yeah. Hey guys, great to reconnect. So I'm Kevin. I lead investments at Plug and Play. We're a venture capital firm. We write checks from $50K to $2 million in companies you may have heard of. In terms of what I would tell myself at 16 is probably to take more risk. I was very much one of those kids that would look at other people of my peers and say, oh, that's what they're doing, so I should probably do the same in terms of whatever it may be, my studies, my potential college major, all those things. So it took, maybe even 10 years to figure out, well, this is what I like to do, not necessarily this is what, society wants me to do. So that would be my best advice.
And I love that because that actually ties back into what Lily just said about the passion or segment of developing. So that is an amazing way to kind of tie those two things together. Reshma, you're coming from the other side of the time divide. So if you will, just introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do, and insights for your 16-year-old self.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is Reshma Mahapatra, and I've been here in the first one and the first panelist, and great to be back in here. In terms of what I do, I'm a manager in Ernst & Young here in London. So basically, all of my work in my day-to-day lives involves, speaking to leaders of different organizations, navigating them through the change and implementing technology. Technology is where, my expertise lies. I have been working on Oracle and other technologies for the last 11 years now. So pretty much into, hold of technology. So coming back to the second part of the question, Daniel, that's on the 16 years old, when I was 16 years old, if I can, go down into my memory lane, I was absolutely studious, totally into my engineering studies. I didn't have time to think about anything because I wanted to be a topper. All of my time just invested, how would I top that subject, or how would I top this, and I was really good at extracurricular activities. So as a 16-year, if I can advise, that then till now, I would say be, obviously as Lily mentioned, passion is very much important because that lies in your heart. If you're passionate about something, you would definitely put your heart towards that. And there is no way that you will not succeed in your life. But I think what's the second important is, never stop learning, no matter in whichever stage in your life comes in, always learn, and be it from a small child to a 90 years old, and a person, there's so much learning experiences around you. So you make sure that, you never stop learning, and that's what I do, So yeah, that's about me.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that insight, because I think one of the things that I think is probably the most important for being successful in life is to cultivate a lifelong love of learning. Like it's literally like the one thing that can separate you from just someone who works hard or just someone who's passionate, that ability to constantly keep learning and then taking action on what you learned. And that goes nicely into the next question, which is about wins and losses, right? Can you tell us a little bit about one of your biggest professional wins, one of your losses, and then one of the lessons you learned from one of your losses? Reshma.
Okay, put on the spot on. So my biggest win, it's not just, I would not class it just biggest, my whole of my work professionally, because I deliver projects, and those projects are all multi-million projects, and you could appreciate that, how big the project would be, in terms of the resources, in terms of the timelines, in terms of the deliverables that we will produce at every stage of the program, So, the biggest wins for me is, when I deliver the project within the time frame that I agreed with the client on the table itself, and within the quality as well, the standards and the quality. If I could do that within those timeframes and the deliverables are of good quality standards, that the client is expecting out of us, they are the biggest wins for me, And in terms of the failures, I think, although the failures are part and parcel of our lives, but what most important is, how do you learn from it? Obviously we are humans, and to err is human. Everyone is committed to do some kind of mistakes in everyone's life, but that's okay, because that's normal. That conforms that you are a normal person, but you learn from that mistake. I had done numerous mistakes, when I reflect, when I pause and reflect, maybe, the situations where I acted upon, I could have acted differently. I would class that's one of my failure, for example. But, but I'm a good learner. I learn from my mistakes very well. So I do not repeat those mistakes ever in my life. At least I try not to. So I would say, like, to all of the students here, because you are so young at this tender age, and you are the future, and all I can say is that, even if you have a failure in your life, but do not take it to your heart, but always think that is an opportunity for you, to do it better, to do it in a more efficient and effective manner, So that's what I would say, Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you. And I do want to apologize, Eileen. I saw your name there, but for some reason I didn't let you introduce yourself. Please accept my apologies. Eileen, if you will please introduce yourself, a little bit about you, what you do, and lessons for your 16-year-old self.
Thanks, Daniel. Thought you forgot about me.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I love your background.
Thanks. I won't hold it against you because I know we have another panel later today. So hi, everyone. I'm Eileen Allen. I am based in Miami, Florida, where I think a lot of the students are as well. But I work for a nonprofit organization called Venture Cafe Miami. And we are what we like to call an ecosystem builder. We bring together people, organizations from across different industries, sectors, communities, with really the goal of connecting innovators to make things happen, because you can't have true innovation without collaboration, without knowing folks different than you. And so we do our best to try to connect and help as many people collaborate across lines of difference, is kind of the broad overview. My specific role is program manager. So I do a lot of our in-person and now digital event curation, finding different ways to create these experiences for true connection and collaboration. We don't like to do kind of very transactional, fake relationships. We really want things to be long lasting. And so I do a lot of that and building partnerships with different individuals and, again, organizations, not just locally in Miami or in South Florida, but across the world. Something that I would tell my 16-year-old self is probably something that I've really honed in on in the past 5 years is, I was that high schooler who was involved in like every extracurricular activity, like all of the honors programs, all of the art classes, all of like language, student government, Model UN, everything. And I would say that has carried on into my adult life and my career and being involved in a lot of things. And I would say it's, it's okay to take time for yourself, because my goal has always been to help as many people as possible, but you can't truly help people if you're not also taking care of yourself first. So allowing that time to step back when it's needed. For me, it's like, why would I take time for myself? Like, I need to keep giving back to others. But, it's been a lesson over the past, I guess, 15 or more so years, to be kinder to myself. And that way I can actually do more for others in that regard.
That is an amazing, amazing lesson. I think too often we get caught up in go, and we don't take enough time to also just detox and love us. So thank you for sharing that. And I will go ahead and second question, which would be about biggest professional win, biggest loss, and lesson that you learned from that.
I'm going to start with the biggest loss, and I will say it was probably one of them was right after college. I graduated with a degree in art history and, again, minors in like visual arts and social sciences, being someone who was interested in a lot of things. And for the life of me, I could not get a job in my field. And as an Asian American who was already going against the grain in terms of studying something that wasn't like in the medical field or science or math or something that kind of my parents or family expected me to go into, trying to prove that I could be successful in the career path that I chose, and not immediately being able to get a job. And actually, I've never worked for an art organization, but I've always found ways to incorporate my passion for the arts, my experience and background in it, into all of the professional, opportunities that I've had. And that has, that was kind of both a big failure at first, kind of feeling like, I had failed myself, I had failed my parents, that I wasn't able to get a job in my field. But it was a huge win being able to see how I've been able to shape my career to still include my background, and make a name for myself in the arts field. There's a lot of integration of the arts and innovation and technology and community development and education, and all other types of industries. And that's where I've kind of found a sweet spot for myself. So.
That is amazing. And there goes that passion word again.
Yeah.
Lily, if you could share your insights as far as professional win, professional loss, and the lesson that you learned from that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll start with my biggest win. And I think it's just going back to talking about how patience and resilience. And, for me coming into college, I pursued a degree in economics because my parents were both entrepreneurs. And at the time, I thought I should study business. I was very passionate about journalism in high school and just didn't think that would appease my parents or take me anywhere. After I got my bachelor's degree, I pursued more learning, took classes at UC Extension, learned how to use different forms of technology, including Adobe products. And I think that's when I realized I could have a career in design. It wasn't immediate. I worked at some small magazines, and I eventually got a break during our second wave of that big .com boom out here on the West Coast. And at the time, there were lots of startups looking for designers, and design played a big role for those companies, whether it was for marketing or sales. But little did I know, I was just going to be making PowerPoint pitch decks and data sheets. It wasn't the same kind of design I had envisioned, working for a big magazine. But, over time, it really was something that I took my experiences in typography and layouts, and everything that you do along the way really helps facilitate like where you are today and where your career goals will be. And I think that was really important, and finding ways to kind of get to that goal. It's not immediate, and there's never a right path. But for me, it was just really realizing that, I could come back and do what I actually really wanted to do many, many years ago. Biggest failure, sometime between working as a freelance designer and getting my first tech job, I wanted to start a food truck business. I went to Japan. I loved all the snacks there. I wanted to bring it back. And, I invested myself in it. At the time, there were much less regulations in San Francisco. So you could set up a little food cart on the sidewalk in front of art shows, bars, clubs. And I did it for about 2 years, 2 years and $10,000 in debt later. I realized, and that's not a lot. I realized I probably should get a more consistent job. And, for me, it was a mix of feeling grateful that I only lost 10K, but also, realizing that balance between your risks and your wants, and then also realizing when it's a good time to move on, and it's just finding that balance. And it's okay to take risks. There are many years to make up for it, and now I'm in a happier position, so it all works out.
That is a great lesson. I would never have guessed you did the food thing. That is, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
like to me that's but that is also it's amazing because you got a chance to try something and it didn't work, but there were still ways that you could take that and apply what you learned from that to where you went from there. So that is amazing. Julie, If you could, same question to you. And also students that don't have their cameras on, please, can you please turn your cameras on? Julie, same question for you. Your win, your loss, your lesson.
Sure. Yeah, I think the camera is a good point. It'd be great to see some of the students' faces who are speaking too. And let us know if you have any questions in between too. I'll start with the loss. Love the story that Lily just shared. I have a similar kind of entrepreneurial story, not exactly as cool as a food cart, although food related. When I was just starting out in college, my friends and I founded a startup that was a mobile software company. So it was around it was kind of like a Yelp for people with specific dietary restrictions. And we were very, very young at the time, younger than now, maybe around your age, a little bit older. Young is relative. Probably old for the audience here today. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of our own money developing out the product. And eventually we got some traction. We got some international coverage. The team traveled to New York from various locations to pitch to some investors, and we got some coverage, press coverage. What ended up happening is we realized after burning through a good amount of money, personal money, that there was a lot that we didn't know. And when I say that, I mean, the kind of scariest element in startups and in anything is a variable called the unknown unknown. So what that means is once you know a problem, you can try to solve it and you can type in Google to find the answer for it. But if you don't even know what you're solving for, and there are these just challenges and the results of the challenges that kind of just hit your way, it goes down a very slippery slope. And a lot of that is from lack of experience, lack of the connections, lack of the guidance of people just telling you, hey, you're missing all these red flags, and you're actually gliding down the hill faster than you thought you would be. So coming out of that experience, which was kind of a hard hit for us, at the time, I kind of took it upon myself to really try to learn everything there is out there to be an entrepreneur, to build a business. And originally I studied media and communications in college. And that was covering, and I ended up going to work for Sony and Mashable and various small to large media companies in fields like marketing, business development, and strategy. And eventually, the piece that wasn't rounding out for me was around numbers. And so I really wanted to understand core economics and financial basics, fundamentals that I didn't study. And so I ended up self-studying and kind of recruiting my way, reading online resources and recruiting my way onto Wall Street, which was a kind of a launching pad for me where you get the training that you can imagine that they're famous for. And that was a stepping stone for me in terms of kind of positioning myself and changing the perception both internally and externally of what my knowledge set is. And I think coming out of that being, a professional win and stepstone was when I jumped into a job at Betaworks, I would say probably a year ago, really, when we were launching a startup internally. And given my background, being a more holistic view, I was tapped to join that startup as the CFO, which stands for Chief Financial Officer. And that's kind of that's a role at a startup space that's very, very strategic. The role evolves, but basically you are the person who is in charge of everything that ever touches a single number. So the easiest way is saying anything in the company that touches a number, from payroll to sales to headcount to data metrics, will cross my desk. And And I think of it as a professional win, not just because of the role or the title, et cetera, but I think because of the trajectory to which I got there. And given that I didn't have that background before when I studied that, and eventually was able to get there as a role just through kind of hard work and invest in myself, and a lot of what we're going to talk through today. I preach that anyone can do it. So,
and I appreciate that because it then goes back to what we were talking about earlier about lifelong love of learning, right? The ability to constantly learn what you're not being tasked to learn, but because you choose to, really does have a compound effect on where you can go once you've taught yourself certain things above and beyond what you need to know. Kevin, you were last this time, but it won't be every time. If you could, biggest professional win, biggest professional loss, lesson learned.
Yeah. I'll try to share different stories and I'll be quick. So I'll make it before investing in that world. So biggest win was before the investing life, I ran a startup with two buddies from college. We were about $2 million in debt, based out of Queens, New York. And we were in a mosque. That was our office. And we couldn't get any product market fit. Like we thought, we had other people's money. When I say debt, I mean more kind of VC money. We had other people's money. No one was buying our product. It wasn't necessarily a great product at all. So we decided to completely pivot our model. We had to lay off a bunch of employees. We went down to 3 founders and then restarted the business with what's called a recap or recapitalization, which is essentially giving back some money to founders and also losing some ownership. And then ultimately brought the business back and ended up selling it. So it was a failure at some point, but then ultimately became a huge success. And then a big failure for me was before this, was when I actually was in college. I am with some incredibly smart panelists who worked on Wall Street. I never had that fortune. I interviewed at 7 investment banks. So Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, et cetera, got to the final interview at every single one of them and was declined every single time. So I remember that point very vividly, even though it's been almost like 15 years, like sitting in my shower and just being like, I'm an absolute failure. I'm never going to do anything in life. I should, just live with my parents for the rest of my life because there's nothing going to come out of it. And actually that low point was like, well, why don't I just start a company with 2 buddies? So it's weird how life opens up these weird doors.
That is an amazing kind of a 360, like it's almost like the hero's journey. You go through the valley, you hit some highs, some lows, some highs again, and you continue to kind of reiterate and invent yourself from that. So pivoting a little bit to talking about pitching, right? Because each of you have seen and worked with business owners, you've been business owners yourself, and you listen to pitches all the time. Can you tell me, and we'll start with Eileen, what would you say are the 3 most key components to a great pitch, especially virtually?
I would say having some type of wow statement or factor at the very beginning to grab your audience, especially virtually. I mean, people already have short attention spans, and now that we're all virtually, I feel like it's even more so. So having something to grab them from the very beginning, and then kind of, defining your problem and as well as showing your solution to that said problem, and then differentiating yourself from competitors, from others. Just there's so many ideas and incredible, businesses out there that you have to show how you're different and set yourself apart so that whoever you're pitching to actually wants to continue get to learn more about you, to support your business. And yeah, I'll stop there.
No problem. I appreciate you kind of setting that off because I really want to get Julie's insights on the 3 key components of a great pitch.
Sure. So the way I see it, it comes down to three factors, and it's clarity, confidence, and your narrative. And it's actually, I think of it in that order, especially if you're defining elements for virtually. So clarity, you're thinking about succinctness. Are you able to tell the investor, presumably, or your stakeholder, just what is the product? You'd be surprised that it is more challenging than you think, because a lot of times, I mean, some of us have heard, you know, you look through a deck, you look at a pitch, and you're just not clear, like, what are they selling me? And the second, around confidence, that takes time to build, that takes time to practice, which we'll go into, and the narrative. So these three factors, I say that in that order because I think of it in order of priority. So clarity and confidence, and the narrative, clarity and confidence, you can have those two and you can sell. Like, investors will actually invest just on two alone. The narrative piece, if you're able to story tell, if you're able to wrap a bow and tie it and kind of ring the ends of the bow tie so that it curls up, like when you're gift wrapping, it really lands the sale. But if you can't and land that, which is tough in itself, and depending on the audience, the first two are good as well. So clarity, confidence, narrative.
I love that. Very great insight there. Kevin, you've been on both sides, man. You've been the pitcher, you've been the pitchee. What would you say you found to be three key components of an effective pitch?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it super simple, but it's why you. They're like, anyone could start a t-shirt business. Why? What about you makes it so special that you're starting the t-shirt business? Is it your background? It doesn't need to be anything super fancy. It could just be the way you grew up, or the people that you know, or the network that you have, or whatever it may be. How are you doing it? I'm incredibly attracted to any CEO that can explain the technicalities of their business. And why are you doing it? Like, you could do anything else in the world. Why do you want to start a company? It's the most likely to fail and the least likely to make you money, probably. You're probably better off investing in real estate or the stock market. So why are you taking this crucial time of your life to do this? Is it anything aside from making money?
Wow. Why you, how, and why? What's your why? Which I think that's
Oh, sorry. Did I repeat why twice? I meant to say
no,
what.
why you, but then what's your why? I
Yeah.
them as two different things, right? Like, why you, the person, but then what's your driving?
Yeah.
You know, what is it that drives you to tackle this challenge? Lily, I'd love to hear what you have to say as far as three insights around an effective pitch.
Yeah, you know, back to the narrative and a good story, really knowing your audience, coming into that conversation, hopefully with something relatable that they can, that'll stick with them. You know, with clarity and a solid goal, there's that expression of your 30-second, you know, elevator pitch, really nailing that, and can you express that clearly, I think is huge. And then being on the visual side, you know, a good presentation, because right now people are looking at their screens, and is it something that they can relate with the words coming out of your mouth while you're presenting, or are they having to read things off of slides? Do the images make sense? So yeah, I guess that's the three.
Awesome. And Reshma, I would love to hear what you would have to say about a pitch, right? An effective pitch. What do you think are the three key components for being able to convey what your business is about?
No, absolutely similar thoughts, you know, what my other co-panelists have already mentioned. And it's always, you know, when you go into the last, you're really missing out what you need to call out now. But, you know, I want to structure this answer like in, you know, the three components that you have asked. The first and foremost is the problem statement, as Aileen mentioned. You know, what are you trying to solve here? You know, because with the problem statement, you're showing them a business opportunity here. And if your idea or business doesn't help to solve a real problem that people have, your business model can be simply unviable. So you need to understand, what the problem statement you're trying to solve, and how much it, the coverage it goes down to. And second, your unique value proposition, coming back to what Kevin mentioned, why you, what is that in you that differentiates you to the other competitors, and that value proposition basically includes your go-to-market strategies, your competitor analysis to see, where are your competitors are positioned in the market. These are quite critical considerations that potential investors will pay attention to, why they are going to invest in your business case. What is that unique element that you have got that's stopping them to invest in the others, So that value proposition and working on that part is quite important and critical. But last but not the least, the third component, which is quite an important one, is concluding the pitch with a call to action. It's always your ending impression, your ending note, you're summarizing the last point, the conclusion is very important. I always say to all my counselees that, your first and your last is where it takes you. You lose interest in the middle at some point, but you make sure you make a good punchline towards the last part of the pitch. And by that, when I say call to action, it can be a call to visit your website. That website might be in progress, but you are still in a developing state. But, that kind of gives the investors that how much you are yourself serious about this problem statement or the business case or the value proposition that you're bringing onto the table. You can call to download your app or subscribe to your service. As Julie mentioned, this is the technological era. This is digital transformation. People always, it's why iPhone is in the most of the market strategy, because it's quite easy to use. It has got different apps in it. So if you can build up a simple app to show your value proposition or your solution, that might be in a very, very understatement or might be in a very developing state. But it's basically you're giving that promise to the investors, how much you're serious about and you're working on. And also a call to test an online demo of your solution. Obviously this is all COVID-19 and we are based out in remote working, but all I want to say here is, you're laying that foundation from now, and then when things comes back to the normal, then you are working on this foundation and you're bringing them and you're nurturing your value proposition, your business case, and you're keeping your investors intact with their interest in you. So 3 components, problem statement, value proposition, your unique value proposition, and your call to action.
I love that ended with the call to action, because I think that is something that we don't necessarily discuss enough. And that's very powerful. A powerful call to action really can move people off the sidelines to taking action, and specifically an action that you want them to take. So that's great insight there. When we speak about startup founders, a lot of startup founders are great technicians. They're good at what they do. They're not great with the nerves, right? That comes with a little bit of practice. What are some of the ways you would say that they can improve a pitch, especially a young entrepreneur? How can they improve their pitch? What would you say 1 or 2 ways to improve a pitch would be, Reshma?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And, by first understanding that you're not alone. Everyone gets nervous. Anxiety is something that it's common to everyone. And there are millions out there who faces this in day-to-day lives. Even when I was a teenager and I was coming onto this public platform while speaking, I used to feel really nervous. My hands used to shake, I used to have cold feet, but this is quite normal. And, how you can overcome this is start with the basics, and that is with practice. Practice makes a person perfect. I wouldn't call a man because that's kind of like gender bias, but practice makes a person perfect, And, I have heard that, there are different experts or strategists, suggesting that, you rehearse your lines in various positions. For example, you can stand up, you can sit down, you can have your arms open wide, So, cultivating different positions while you're rehearsing your lines, you're practicing what you're going to say in front of your potential investors. I think it's going to be, it's a key one. It's going to give you that comfort while you're speaking in your speech. So that's one. The second is, we are now in a digital platform, Daniel, isn't it? You have lots of information going around. They're open source of informations, so attend other speeches, look to see, how other people are portraying themselves, how they're structuring their response, So, this doesn't show the respect to your fellow presenters, but also give you the chance to fill out the audience, how do you structure your answers, so that's second. And the third is, for me is, how you get over nerves when presenting is, take deep breaths, work on your pauses. That's an important one. You need to understand, this is a go-to advice, you need to understand when you want to pause, because you don't want to end up like speaking whole throughout the session and no one is listening to you. The people might be nodding their head, but they might not be listening to you. So how do you keep their interest is, you're giving them the opportunity to speak. While you're speaking, leave enough amount of pauses or space to give the person who is listening to you to ask questions. In that way, you are improving the engagement, over there. And, the last and most important for me is always that I tell to everyone is be presentable. Always bear that smile in your face, because smile, that really takes you a long way. You don't want to go into a meeting or asking for millions of dollars, from potential investors going in a grumpy face, If he is not comfortable working with you, why he's going to spend $1 million in your project? That's a very common thing, So you make sure that, you smile. And, there is a scientific reason as well, Daniel, that through smiling, it increases a hormone called endorphins. Basically, it replaces your anxiety with calm and making you feel good about your presentation. So, so yes, so smile. So I would say these are the components that I would say about, getting over your nerves while presenting. And if you have them in your focus, I'm sure you're going to lay down a great presentation.
Awesome. That is great advice. I hope you didn't take everything off of the board for everyone else. Eileen, I would love to hear what you have to say about getting over nerves and also improving your presentation.
Sure. Reshma did a great job of outlining some points, but I would really harp on the practicing part. Practice in front of, family, friends, anyone that you live with, anyone that you can get on Zoom with. The more people that you practice in front of, especially of different backgrounds, the better that you'll also be able to understand your pitch, your presentation, and potentially what questions other people might be asking. If they don't understand you, you need to find a new way of communicating it to people. And, in terms of practicing and being very self-aware, something that my ninth grade English teacher made us do for an assignment, and I despised her for doing this, but also now I'm thankful, is that she made us record ourselves giving a speech. And then we had to replay it, not once, but 3 times, and watch ourselves and listen to ourselves to see, what our strengths were in our presenting and our communication, and then what areas we needed to work on. And we had to do it again and again and again until we got to a point where we were like, okay, we would, give ourselves an A on this presentation. And there's so many, you could just use your phone, your laptop, anything to record yourself and to watch it. And it's uncomfortable. Like, I hate hearing myself on video and I hate looking at myself on video, but it really does help you to understand what people are looking at when you are presenting. And yeah, I would say, echoing again Reshma's comment about, connecting with people as much as you can. I think that's also especially important digitally, and learning how to, you know, it's one thing when you're on Zoom and you want to look at the faces of everyone on the screen, but it doesn't always allow for the best connection in terms of who you're pitching to. So you should try to look like directly at the camera light. There's a difference between when you do that and versus like I'm looking at Lily in like the bottom left portion of my screen. And so it looks like, you know, I feel like I'm connecting with her, but everyone else in the audience is not going to feel that. And she's just like, why is she looking, you know, this way? Like, what's behind her laptop? So, you know, there's a lot of things that you have to be cognizant of when you're practicing for a pitch and when you're actually pitching, especially in this kind of digital age. And so just the more that you can do it, even if you're not pitching, the more that you can just speak in front of a camera or pretend like you're speaking in front of a camera, in front of a mirror, it's going to be really helpful in showing, you know, what your face looks like, what your hand movements and your gestures, your inflection points, and just being very self-aware and cognizant of how you are presenting yourself.
Awesome. And I love the fact that you brought back a lesson from your high school teacher, because that is a very real thing, right? Recording yourself and then watching yourself back. These sessions we record, and I hate watching myself, right? But we record them because there's great information that we can then use and parse out to help students when they come, even during the school year, and they hit these particular metrics. It's easier for them to kind of watch somebody that's given great insight about this before. Lily, I mean, students get nervous, adults get nervous. It's not easy to get up in front of people knowing that they're literally judging you. So what kind of insights do you have about getting over the nerves and improving their pitch?
Yeah, you know, back to the practice piece, practice on your friends, your family, your dog. Ask them for insights after you're done. What did they like about it? Ways to improve, and really take those suggestions, you know, to heart. They're only trying to help you. And then also, you know, think of different scenarios that could happen during that presentation and find ways to potentially prepare yourself for it. Prepare for ways to break up your speech if you find the audience, you know, drifting away. And then also nipping, you know, technical things in the bud. The worst thing to start a presentation is you get on, things aren't going right. Give yourself that extra time, you know, to log on and to kind of take a few deep breaths before everything starts, so that you're in the right mind frame. And then, you know, best ways to kind of improve your speech is constantly finding ways to make it relevant. Your business plan will probably be with you for years. Finding ways to constantly keep it innovative, and then taking all those suggestions from people that you've been practicing and pitching to. It's a long process, but you know, be there for it.
Awesome. Kevin, like I said, you've got a lot of insights on both sides of this equation. What would you say are ways that our students can work out and improve their pitches?
Yeah. So on the practice point, one thing that I love doing is practice to your non-investor. Okay, so honestly, like, this is just some real talk. VCs and the people that you meet in a retirement home aren't really quite different in terms of their knowledge of your specific product. So what I used to do when I was an entrepreneur, I was volunteering anyway at a retirement home, and I would pitch to this bingo night, and they sometimes got what I did, most of the time didn't, and they were very blunt. They were irritable. They just would be like, "I don't get what you're saying," and then that was actually incredibly useful feedback, because you realize that as an entrepreneur, you spend 24 hours in your product, and you explain things assuming other people know what you're talking about, and most of the time they're coming fresh. If you do that only to investors, oftentimes what I've seen and what I personally know as an investor is, you like, if they don't know what you're saying, they might just glaze over it because they're a little embarrassed. They don't want to mention it, that, you know, like, oh, what does that mean? Because they don't want to seem silly themselves. VCs and investors are the same. But I personally prefer the non-investor group to pitch practice to. The other main kind of pitch advice I would say is say people's name and relate it to their story. So if I just go, hey, Daniel, like, there's clear chemical science that proves that one's name, kind of the endorphin conversation before, it activates your attention. We've been trained over whatever many years of our lives to look and immediately pay attention and hyper focus on our names. And if you do one, say the name and then relate it to their story. So use all your social media stalking skills, anything you've groomed over the years of, tracking exes or potential boyfriend or girlfriend, use all of that to understand who you're pitching to and go from there.
I love the fact that you kind of advocated for social media stalking, but low key though.
We all do it. Might as well just be honest about it.
I mean, look, it's not like it's not happening. Julie, what would you say that doesn't border on social media stalking?
Well, I think that's the first time I've been compared to someone in a retirement home. So I'm just definitely going to bring that up with my team. I think everyone could use a dose of humbling. Pretty close to there anyways. I think first we just want to realize that nerves are healthy. It's a mindset. So having nerves, if you think about it, means that you're about to embark on something, an action that makes you uncomfortable and with high potential to fail. Right. And that is very healthy, as in you're trying something out of your zone. If you have no nerves going into something, you've done it too many times. And so I think in terms of improving the pitch, a lot of my fellow panelists have, killed the coverage. So it's just practice in every way you can, to everyone you can, investors or not. And there are different hacks that you can do so, different tips, from filming to scripting it to changing clothes or to checking out the venue before. Ton of stuff you can just Google yourself as well. In terms of getting over the nerves, there's a couple of hacks that I've used and I've heard other used, but sometimes just like bumping your adrenaline up before you're going to present. So that might be doing 10 push-ups, doing 15 push-ups, however many push-ups you can do, maybe it's 3, or running up and down a flight of stairs. It gets you out of breath and it puts you in a different kind of mind frame that your anxiety is, it comes from like the rush instead of a negative fear of failure anxiety. And then the second would be around watching like motivational videos before. Gets me into different mindsets sometimes, maybe some YouTube clips that are like 3 to 5 minutes and like just telling you and pumping you up. And then another might be just like talking to a friend, someone you're very close to. I don't necessarily go by parents, but it could be your parents, someone who you think will give you that extra nudge to be like, hey, you can, who's your cheerleader? Be like, hey, you've done this before, just kill it, that you think is effective.
Awesome. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for sharing your insights. Like I said, I do want to leave a little bit of time for some of the students to get some questions in. They're actually presenting tomorrow. And so for a lot of them, they're kind of nervous. They have been through the coaching. We've been working with them in the sessions. But if any of the students have any questions that they want to kind of ask any of our panelists or all of our panelists, I can promise you, if you were to hire each one of them to coach you, your parents would have to mortgage the house to pay for one session. I would take advantage of them all being here at the same time right now to get some last minute insights on ways you can make your pitch better. The chat is open if any students have, or if you want to raise your hand. No one has any questions.
I see Daniel raising his hand.
Daniel. All right, Daniel, talk to me. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, I have a question for all you guys. Is it good to put if you connect to your entrepreneurship or your business, is it good to put that in the beginning or the middle of the presentation?
Yeah. So the question is, you're saying like about you, talking about yourself. I'm assuming.
Like if you like, what I'm saying is like if you like relate to the to your business.
Oh, if your story.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna assume your business is just starting. I would put in the beginning. That makes you relatable. I immediately like think of you as a human and not as like startup pitch robot. I would go right in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. Absolutely. Putting that upfront would give you that, the advantage of, connecting with the investors that you are in, and also, if the investors have got any questions, then you could directly answer at that point, and then you can move on to your next subsections of the presentation, So yes, definitely I echo what Kevin mentioned, putting that in upfront, making sure, what your story is all about, what are you trying to solve as kind of the problem statement, what are your value propositions, I think that's definitely going to help.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes back to Kevin's point about why you, but I would also just be very cognizant of the time that you have in front of whoever you're pitching to, and make sure that you don't get too stuck on your own story and your connection to your business or product, and that you have time to, finish the rest of the pitch. Because there are sometimes where, they're so excited about sharing their story and why they developed this business or this product and how it ties to them, that they kind of forget, or they don't get to the other part of it. And it's just like, okay, I'm super excited about you as a person, but I don't know, anything about your business or what you're selling or how I can, or what type of support you're looking for. So just be cognizant that you're not spending too much time on your story, just, an appropriate amount.
And I think Juliet said something about narrative. So I think that plays right back to when she spoke about that, right? It's important to have a narrative that's not just the business, but also you work a little bit on the story of you. It really kind of connects back to the why that Kevin spoke about, the why you and narrative, kind of combining those together to really make a compelling case for you as the founder. Go ahead.
Yeah, one point we didn't talk about, and I know we're running short on time, is the difference between the virtual and the in-person pitch. And, given the environment we're in, obviously everything is moving more towards virtual. I would say the key difference is that I would fully utilize your social media stalking abilities. The reason why is you want to be close to your stakeholder and understand kind of how they're thinking about what they're interested about. And so you can build that into your narrative and your pitch and your about me. So for example, if you're a t-shirt company and say, Lily is really played high school baseball. And so when you're picking your Lily, Lily, I used to play sports too, for example. If you wanted a t-shirt on your favorite baseball team, and you just kind of throw that out there, Lily's like, oh, I used to play baseball. And then you kind of have a little bit of a connection. She may or may not know that you looked into that and that was purposeful, but you build a kind of a micro connection there that almost makes up for the in-person. Because in-person is usually what just closes the sale. But virtually, you kind of have to figure out little hacks now to do so. So pro social media stalking.
We have another vote for pro social media stalking. Kyra does have a question in the chat that asks, how do you deal with that one very tough investor that only invests if they really believe in your product? Really is all caps, so it should be really believe in your product. We're going to start with the investors on this one, just because I kind of feel like at sometimes, if you love it, great, but if you're still understanding it, you might come across as that tough investor. Either Julie or Kevin first, if you want, or Reshma, you're up.
No, absolutely. It drills down to the trust, the faith, and I think that's a key component. One person can only give away his money or can invest when he trusts in you or when he believes in your project or a business case or a product. And how do you build that trust? It's all drilled down to your communication. Communicating clearly your business case. You're giving them a practical example. What the value proposition drill down to. So how would I structure is, in this environment is, because you are all so young and you want all experiences in your life, focus on the basics first, pick up on the fundamentals first, that's where you can lay down your foundation. If I'm potential investors and you're pitching towards me, all I'm going to look is, what is there unique about you and it's not in the others, So you need to be very much careful about the wordings that you choose. And I really echo what Eileen mentioned. You need to be very constructive in your answers. You don't want to go on rambling on and on your business ideas, because I know that you are excited at this stage. You have found an opportunity and you want to talk about it because this is an idea. But you need to be very much composed. You need to be very much vigilant about whom you are presenting to. If the person has only got 20 minutes, really, that's the 20 minutes can make your life go really to a next level. So how do you use that? You use that with your awareness, your experience, it's all drilled down to, how do you get over your nerves during the presentation? It's all get into your awareness, your education piece, but the first and the most important thing is, you need to have trust in yourself first, then only you can lay the other person to have trust in you. If you do not believe your product, no one is going to believe in you as well or your product. So you make sure that you have a compelling business case. You have done your homework before you come into the investors, because bear in mind, you might be less experienced, but they are very far experienced than you. So they would be looking for those all minute details because money is coming from their end. You are just giving the service in return. So you make sure you understand those two key aspects and then work accordingly.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share?
I also have a question. So when people are
give us just a quick second to make sure everybody got a chance to answer the previous one.
2 cents on my side is if an investor only cares about your product and not about you, don't waste your time. That's a useless investor. My top 10 investments was not the same product when we invested. Especially at this stage, you're primarily investing in the people, and the idea should be baked out and should be thought out. But really, that's kind of a proxy for who you are. Has this person thought about their business? Do they think about all the risks, etc.? For me, what I've learned through investing as a career is if you only invest in a product right away, you're probably going to fail because that product is going to change. The world changes. And if this entrepreneur isn't someone that changes, you don't want that. And secondly, your investors are the people you're getting married to for 7 years. If you don't like them and you're trying to convince them and trying to convince yourself that you're supposed to like them, it's probably not a fit. Just move on to the next one. Don't waste your time.
Awesome. And I think you spoke to that the last time you were with us. You spoke to I think Honey being a very different company when it first pitched from when you finally went public and the growth between that. So that you're talking about something that was a real example that really happened in real time.
Yeah, Honey was a completely different company when we invested, and then it got acquired many years later because the entrepreneurs realized their business didn't make a lot of sense. They changed it.
Awesome. Anyone else want?
Sorry, Daniel. Excuse me. I need to drop off because it's late for me. So thank you very much. It was totally an honor for knowing all of my co-panelists, knowing about their life stories and practical lessons. I'm sure that we would connect after this in LinkedIn or somewhere in the social media to Kevin's point and Julie. echoing that. So yes, so looking forward to that. And thank you, Daniel, and all the
Thank
very
you.
best to all the scholars. You know,
Absolutely. Thank
hope
you.
the pitching go very well for tomorrow. Take care.
Take care. Andre, you had a question.
Yeah, so I was wondering, when people are pitching to you, what is something that immediately grabs your attention, and what is something that immediately like turns you off from the presentation and you become uninterested in it?
For me, I would say it kind of goes back to that idea of passion and confidence, and the feeling that you are evoking to your audience. That's what initially grabs me. I can feel that energy from you and get that vibe. That's going to pull me in and want to listen to you even more and really understand what you're talking about. Something that turns me off, it would be listening and feeling like they don't actually know what they're doing, or just or kind of transactional vibe from them, where it's like, okay, you're only coming to me because I can provide you with X, Y, and Z, but you're not actually trying to build a relationship. I think, to Kevin's point from the last question, like, people invest in people, and people want to build relationships with people. So having that kind of can give me this much money, so I'm going to go into it with that mindset. Like, you can read people's authenticity, even if it's virtually, and what they're really trying to go after. So I would say that would turn me off.
In terms of what is most attractive, I think, is credible insight from the founder. So especially if it is based on hustle. So to give you an example, if we're using the t-shirt company and you told me, hey, I have a t-shirt company, these are the wireframes, these are the color I'm going through. And I'm like, okay, like, why this t-shirt company? Why these two colors? Why you? And you tell me, well, in the past year, I've tried out 20 different shades per group session, and this shade of teal in an FFCC2 in Photoshop that's paired with this neon orange has performed the best at this price. And I'm like, oh, okay, so she knows her audience. She's built insights and some traction, as well as demonstrated sales ability. So I was like, this girl, even though it's just a t-shirt company, differentiates herself from another girl or guy who is selling t-shirts at the same high school. That's impressive. In terms of what turns me off is arrogance. So that's a big factor for me. There are a lot of people who have early successful experiences before, and they kind of think they know more than they do. And like what we've explained, the relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur is like a marriage. It's a working relationship. There's coachability. There are a lot of unknowns. So am I willing to work with this person in the future? Should there be success or not success? Are they willing to work with me? Or are they just going to kind of take my money and run and do whatever they decide to do? Which I'm sure, some of my panelists can speak to. Everyone in their portfolio has these founders where they take your money and ultimately do whatever they want to do. But 2020 hindsight vision, you want to consider that going into the relationship.
Awesome. Go ahead, Kev. Oh. Anyone else
I
have?
would just say, Daniel, just a quick on mine, turns me off. Business jargon, don't use it. It's like, I know it makes you sound official, but if you say circle back in a pitch, I'm just like, people have mentioned that.
Awesome. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you very much. Just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for being willing to stick around for just a few moments to answer a couple more questions from our students. We appreciate you. This cannot be possible without you. Eileen, I will see you in about 3 hours again. So thank you so very much for joining us today. Hopefully for those students who were kind of figuring everything out, this helped a little bit. Definitely looking forward to seeing what you put together for tomorrow. So I will be there. I'm wishing the best for you. Thank you very much all. Have an amazing afternoon.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you so much for joining.